This is Land of Havilah, 2 Kings 21. Hezekiah, king of Judah, passed on, and Manasseh his son reigned in his place. Now, verse 1. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, after the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh cast out before the children of Israel. Comment: Before the Israelites came to the Promised Land, there were 7 nations already living there, Deuteronomy 7:1 and Leviticus 18:24 and 25. Because of their evil, Yahweh expelled them from the land and replaced them with the Israelites, Deuteronomy 9:4. But now Manasseh is leading Judah to do the same evil that the 7 nations were doing. Yahweh always does the right thing and never has to apologize, but if he doesn't expel Judah, he'll have to apologize to the 7 nations. Yahweh said from the beginning that this would be the case. He would cast Israel out of the land if they were going to act like the 7 nations, Leviticus 18:28. He already cast the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom out, verse 3. For he built again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. For he raised up altars for Baal and made an Asherah, as Ahab king of Israel did, and worshipped all the army of the sky, and served them. Comment: Just like Ahab did in Samaria, 1 Kings 16:32, Manasseh built a temple and altar for Baal and made images of the goddess Asherah. The army of the sky clearly indicates all the visible objects in the sky, the sun, moon, stars, and planets, Deuteronomy 4:19. Manasseh worshipped them, verse 4. He built altars in Yahweh's house, of which Yahweh said, I will put my name in Jerusalem. He built altars for all the army of the sky in the 2 courts of Yahweh's house. Comment: A court is a paved, walled-in area open to the sky. Manasseh built altars for the sun, moon, stars, and planets, the army of the sky, in the 2 courts of Yahweh's house, in Yahweh's face, verse 6. He made his sons to pass through the fire, practiced sorcery, used enchantments, and dealt with those who had familiar spirits, and with wizards. He did much evil in Yahweh's sight to provoke him to anger. Comment: 2 Chronicles 33:6 indicates he made more than one of his children, quote, pass through the fire, end quote, which almost certainly indicates he burned them to death in sacrifice to the god Molech, as the coming chapter is more explicit about it, 2 Kings 23:10. Passing through the fire seems to be a polite expression which avoids the full impact of the horror. The part about familiar spirits is only loosely translated here in English. It's literally in Hebrew, quote, he set up a ritual pit along with conjurers, end quote. This indicates the practice of calling up the spirits of the dead, as the witch of Endor did for Saul when she called up the spirit of Samuel, when Saul said, quote, seek for me a woman who has a familiar spirit, 1 Samuel 28:7. The dead were seen as being in the underworld, and the pit was for getting a little closer to them, we might say, so that they could be called up more easily. The pit was attended by a professional conjurer. The conjurer had a familiar spirit, meaning he was familiar with the dead. Of course, Yahweh forbade every conceivable occultic activity, Deuteronomy 18:9-14, such as calling on the dead, sorcery, wizardry, witchcraft, divination, soothsaying, reading of omens, and casting of spells. Such things are abominations, Deuteronomy 18:12, and Manasseh was knee-deep. It's interesting that these occultic abominations survive to the present day. Verse 7. He set the engraved image of Asherah that he had made in the house of which Yahweh said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. I will not cause the feet of Israel to wander any more out of the land which I gave their fathers, if only they will observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, and according to all the law that my servant Moses commanded them. Comment: In addition to the altars to all the army of the sky and the courts, in verse 17, Manasseh put an engraved image of Asherah, the goddess of fertility, inside the temple. Yahweh guaranteed that Israel would be stable in the land with no one to push them out if they would obey the law of Moses. That guarantee is now null and void. Yahweh expelled the 7 nations long ago. He expelled the northern kingdom more recently, and soon it'll be Judah. All 3 times it'll be for all the same things. Yahweh expressed his expulsion as a force of nature, quote, the land was defiled, therefore I punished its iniquity, and the land vomited out her inhabitants, Leviticus 18:25. This was the same warning Christ gave the lukewarm, quote, I will vomit you out of my mouth, Revelation 3:16. John 3:16 and Revelation 3:16 are the soft and hard sides of God. For God so loved the world in one, and I will vomit you out of my mouth in the other. Verse 9. But they didn't listen, and Manasseh seduced them to do that which is evil more than the nations did whom Yahweh destroyed before the children of Israel. Comment, it's a sad commentary. Judah's worse than the 7 nations. Verse 10. Yahweh spoke by his servants the prophets, saying, Because Manasseh, king of Judah, has done these abominations, and has done wickedly above all that the Amorites did, who were before him, and has also made Judah to sin with his idols, therefore Yahweh the God of Israel says, Behold, I bring such evil on Jerusalem and Judah that whoever hears of it, both his ears will tingle. Comment, verse 11 mentions idols. Manasseh made Judah to sin with his idols. The Hebrew word is actually logs. He made Judah to sin with his logs, which is probably an intentional triple reference applying to 3 things at once, an idol, a log of wood, and a log of human feces. This is why many English translations add the word disgusting in front of idols to more clearly give the full impact of what's actually being said. Manasseh's idols are disgusting. Yahweh goes on, verse 13, I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria and the plummet of Ahab's house. Comment, the line and the plummet, or plumb bob, are tools of measurement. Yahweh's going to measure Judah or examine it and use the plumb bob to see whether or not the city is upright and stretch out the line to see if it's straight. He's going to use the same line and plumb bob that he used on Samaria, and we know what happened there. There are 2 ways God can deal with us. He can measure us, which is never a good thing because his line will certainly find that we're crooked, and his plumb bob will find that we're not upright. Or rather than measuring us, Yahweh can extend grace as he did to Hezekiah, not by measuring Hezekiah, but by casting Hezekiah's sins behind his back, Isaiah 38:7. So we should repent and pray for grace and not measurement, and we shouldn't measure others, for God will judge us as we judge others. Unfortunately, Yahweh says he's going to measure Jerusalem, and going on, still in verse 13, And I will wipe Jerusalem as a man wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. Comment, in our language we would say that he's going to sweep Jerusalem clean. Verse 14, I will cast off the remnant of my inheritance. Comment, the remnant of his inheritance refers to the people in Judah at the time. Yahweh's people are his inheritance. He'll destroy the present universe with fire, 2 Peter 3:12, but from his point of view it won't be a total loss because he'll keep his people as his inheritance. Quote, But Yahweh has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace of Egypt to be to him a people of inheritance, as it is to this day, Deuteronomy 4:20. Usually it's expressed that the people will do the inheriting of eternal life, a heavenly home, etc., but it works both ways. We'll inherit Yahweh and his kingdom, and he'll inherit us. But here it says, I will cast off the remnant of my inheritance, meaning he'll cast off Judah. The ones still alive are a remnant because they escaped the captivity of Samaria, and they've escaped all the calamities in Judah so far. But of that remnant, he'll cast them off, still in verse 14, and deliver them into the hands of their enemies. They will become a prey and a plunder to all their enemies, because they have done that which is evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger, since the day their fathers came out of Egypt, even to this day. Comment, from the time the people were slaves in Egypt until now, we can't think of any extended periods when they were faithful to Yahweh. He's had a lot of patience with them for 700 years. Verse 16, Moreover, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much until he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another, in addition to his sin with which he made Judah to sin in doing that which was evil in Yahweh's sight. Comment, Manasseh filled Jerusalem with innocent blood. There were a number of people left over from Hezekiah's righteous kingdom that probably rebuked Manasseh, specifically the prophets that were mentioned above that rebuked him, and Manasseh executed them until there was no one left to oppose him. Verse 17. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh and all that he did, and his sin that he sinned, Aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? Manasseh slept with his fathers and was buried in the garden of his own house, in the garden of Uzzah, and Amon his son reigned in his place. Comment. Yahweh said he would wipe Jerusalem clean like a plate. He also vowed through Jeremiah that he would exhume the bones of all the wicked kings of Judah, along with the other leading men of the city, and scatter them on the surface of the earth like dung. Jeremiah 8:1 and 2. Manasseh died, and his son Amon is king. Verse 19. Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Meshullemeth, the daughter of Heroz of Jotbah. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, as Manasseh his father did. He walked in all the ways that his father walked in, and served the idols that his father served, and worshipped them. And he abandoned Yahweh, the God of his fathers, and didn't walk in the way of Yahweh. The servants of Ammon conspired against him and put the king to death in his own house. Comment. Some of the king's own subjects killed him in the palace. Verse 24. But the people of the land killed all those who had conspired against Ammon, and the people of the land made Josiah his son king in his place. Comment. Yahweh keeps protecting the line of David. In the northern kingdom, 7 out of 19 kings died by murder: Nadab, Elah, Zimri, Zechariah, Shallum, Pekahiah, and Pekah. In all 7 cases, the murderer took the throne, which would seem to be the expected course of events. But in Judah there were also 19 kings, but with only 2 dying by murder, Joash and Ammon. But in both cases the dynasty lived on by the son taking the throne. This was Yahweh preserving the line of David, as he said to David in 2 Samuel 7:16, quote, "Your throne will be established forever," end quote. So what happened 8 times in the northern kingdom never happened once in Judah. Verse 25. Now the rest of the acts of Ammon which he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? He was buried in his tomb in the garden of Uzzah, and Josiah his son reigned in his place. Comment. That was a short account of the 2-year reign of wicked Ammon. The information on Ammon in Chronicles is exactly what we have here. 2 Kings 22 is next at landofhavilah.net, 2 Kings 22.